Good afternoon. This is Jim Werbenoth again, and today I'd like to talk to you about a heuristic, a rule of thumb, if you will, of critical thinking termed Occam's razor. The classic definition of Occam's razor states that the simplest explanation is probably the most correct one, that complexity leads to a greater chance of falsehood or a erroneous conclusion or just being plain old off the mark. The term Occam's razor is credited to the scholar and Franciscan monk William of Occam, who lived in the late 13th and early 14th centuries, largely by the Scottish philosopher Sir William Hamilton in 1852. But there's nothing really new about it. There were similar principles written by Sir Isaac Newton, Ptolemy, and Aristotle. And from the beginning, Occam's razor has been essential to the hard sciences and also to the social sciences and other fields of inquiry, including history. Something to remember here is the importance of probability. What we're looking for is probably the most correct solution, but it's not the same as certainly the correct one. Certainties are a lot harder to find in the social sciences, especially, that there's always going to be room for error. There's also going to be room that we need to know more. Now, Occam's razor has sometimes failed in the physical sciences where it has been applied the most and where it is considered much more essential. For example, the simplest explanations of meteorites, just rocks falling out of the sky rather than as interplanetary objects from within the solar system. The current belief that they come from within the solar system was not always accepted. It was regarded as too complicated. Thomas Jefferson, for example, was very skeptical of meteorites. And sometimes we've gone into the wrong direction because of Occam's razor as well in biology. The idea of spontaneous generation, that you get a pile of trash, you set it in a corner, and mice spontaneously erupt, was eventually disproven by Pasteur, who showed that it's a matter of actual breeding and reproduction with at least two mice, a male and a female, rather than them coming out of the air spontaneously. Now, in the social sciences, one of the places where I see Occam's razor is especially valuable is against the most unreasonable conspiracy theories. It's a giant rock, and conspiracy theories run aground there. But on the other hand, some conspiracies have been proven to exist, regardless of Occam's razor, that these are proven. Conspiracies are by definition complicated, that you have more than one person getting together and as a group going on criminal or otherwise surreptitious adventures and doing it in a concerted manner. Conspiracy does exist, and here's some of the evidence. First of all, organized crime. The mafia is a secret society that maintains conspiracy as a way of life. This is what gives it its organization. Current Latin American drug cartels, terrorist groups, they're conspiracies. They exist. Therefore, there is room for conspiracy theory. Coup d'etat are, by definition, conspiracies. You don't have one officer deciding to overturn a government. You have more than one. You've got a bunch. That it's a conspiracy. It exists. Another example would be the post-World War II rat lines for the Nazis. where American intelligence especially, and elements within the Catholic Church, allowed Nazis guilty of war crimes to go to Latin America and find sanctuary in places like Chile, Argentina, and Paraguay. And you could argue, too, that these were a matter of policy by the United States government, but they were also illegal and covert. I really can't find a legal rationale for protecting a bunch of genocidal maniacs, but here we are. Also, spy rings. While again, they're part of policy, they're often illegal in the countries where they're located. Example, a Soviet spy ring in the United States, like John Walker and his family, might be legal by Soviet and Russian standards, but in this country, they're definitely illegal and engaged in criminal activity, namely treason. Finally, we have the assassination of John F. Kennedy. That is certainly a conspiracy, as concluded by the 1977 Select Committee on Assassinations in the House of Representatives. They did not say who the conspirators were. It's a matter of conclusion by the observer, but their conclusion was that Lee Harvey Oswald did not act alone, that he was part of a larger conspiracy. My belief, it was the mafia. Again, let's go back to organized crime. And they were the ones that put the plot together and actually assassinated the president. One of the biggest cases that I can think of Occam's razor failing in history was the ultra-secret in World War II. 1974, when it was finally revealed that the United States and Britain, preceded by France and Poland, had found a way to decrypt the German Enigma codes, this mandated the rewriting all of World War II history. That things that look like coincidence and look like luck, which might be the simpler explanation and therefore more in accordance with Occam's razor, turned out to be extremely complicated, involving the efforts of thousands of people who managed to stay quiet about it for 29 years after the war. That this is one of these cases where Occam's razor fails. And we ended up having an explanation that was improbable and definitely one that happened, though. One that was in defiance of the principle of Occam's razor. Here we have an early computer with the man responsible for driving the ultra-secret, Alan Turing, a brilliant British mathematician and pioneering computer scientist, who unfortunately was basically hounded into suicide by the British government on the grounds that he was a homosexual. But this is a case of the surprise, improbable solution to events in World War II, including and especially the Allied victory in the Battle of the Atlantic, that was the result of an improbable factor. Not luck, not better radar, but a highly improbable and improbably successful effort to read the Nazis' mail. So this is a case where we have to keep an open mind. And as I say a lot to my students, keep an open mind, but not so open that your brain falls out. With Occam's razor, it's a reliable start, not a certain end. Even in the physical sciences, it can be a guideline, it can be a heuristic, but you need observation, you need evidence to reach a conclusion. So this is a starting point. It's not an end in and of itself. First of all, start with the simple. Look for the most simple explanation for something. Don't go adding new variables and functions to that explanation unless you have evidence. Otherwise, be very, very careful. Maintain skepticism. but don't be rigid, or at least so rigid that you lose sight of the evidence and the conclusions that are staring you right in the face. Also, avoid speculation into the unknown, and especially the unknowable. Now, this is a case where the ultra secret goes counter to this, because it introduced technology that was unknown through 1974. Well, at least we didn't know it existed during World War II. Following Occam's razor, no one could have guessed the full nature and the full importance of the ultra secret. So that's an exception to the rule, and there will be exceptions, but generally avoid speculation into the unknown, and including what you can't know. Don't go dreaming up new theories, new terms that sound real sure and certain, but you don't have any evidence to back them up. You can talk about what is known, and maybe a variable of it, or expand on it, but try to be very sure of your evidence. And don't go wandering off into imagination land, without a guide especially, but generally avoid imagination land. Also, have the humility to admit what you just can't explain. That if you can't fully explain something, say so. There's no shame in that. The shame comes in is when you get certain and rigid about something that you can't explain, and you ask your audience or your students to take it on faith. That is fine for religion, but not for either the physical or the hard science or the social sciences. Stick with what's observable, what can actually be introduced as evidence to your work. Now, there are a lot of sources out there. I picked 4 here. Probably the most useful that I have used, and I've used this in my teaching, is Susan Borowski's article, The Origin and Popular Use of Occam's Razor, from the American Association for the Advancement of Science. She goes into the history of it and also its application. I think it's a very good short article. John Joe McFadden, no, that is not a misprint. His name really is John Joe, writes a good article for the National Library of Medicine, as does Ronit Sethi in Occam's Razor and the Virtue of Science at Duke University. They're excellent, and I would consider them to be authoritative sources, along with Joshua Kirsch. His What is Occam's Razor? That's very basic, but also very short, but also gives a good foundation that you don't have to read some massive textbook to understand something. These are good places to start, and I definitely encourage everyone to research and find their own sources and look at it from different angles. Just stay away from Wikipedia, of course. Not that it's bad, it's just that it's not widely accepted in the academic field for some very good reasons. But look for the sources that maybe Wikipedia uses to research their articles. So, I'd like to thank you all for watching and listening. I hope this has been a help to you. Feel free to like and share. And of course, go out and tell your friends if you find this useful. It's stuff that I teach. I do especially in digital literacy at American Public University System. And usually the first announcement that I put online for any of my classes at University of Arizona Global Campus is on Occam's Razor. And I will be adding this video to it in subsequent classes, probably starting tomorrow. So thank you all for watching and listening. Please like and share, tell your friends, and again, thanks for your attention.